Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us in London for the premiere of this amazing series. Maybe we can begin with a brief introduction. What can people expect from Archie?
4 hours of cracking telly, and we peel the layers back on somebody who looked like they had the perfect life. You know, there's plenty of those people around today in our phones, and at the time he was the biggest film star in the world for 30 years and adored, worshipped all over the world, and he was incredibly, he was in incredible pain almost all the time from the scars of his childhood, and you watch him struggle with those things and try and find some way to make himself better, and one of the ways he found is by falling in love, obsessively falling in love, and then destroying the thing that he loves, or trying to. So it's it's a story about the biggest film star in the world and how none of that made him happy.
It's almost incredible to believe that there hasn't been a dramatisation like this before, and the amount of research and meticulous detail that's gone into kind of recreating his life is amazing. Jeff Pope, what an amazing screenwriter! All the stuff he's done before. I just recently watched The Reckoning, actually.
Yeah.
Why did you want to jump on board with the project? And when you first read that script, what was the appeal?
I mean, it's my dream job. I fell in love with Diane so quickly as soon as I started watching her. I desperately wanted to work with Jeff, and had for years, and Paul Andrew Williams, our director. And after my first, so I did a tape, and then I did it in the room, and then after my first in the room, they said, "You've got to come back." And Paul told me on the phone that you were Cary, that you were playing Cary, and I was like, oh God, here we go. It's even more my dream job. So yeah, I just
evaporated pretty quickly on set.
Yeah, that died on day one. But it seemed like a good idea. Like all of the people involved, and then this incredible story, which I thought I knew about Cary Grant, and I didn't. So for me, yeah, and like the complexity of their relationship and the amount that you get to experience through the scripts and through the watching of like a snapshot of their life. Yeah, I was desperate for it.
Oh, I just wanted to do it because I'm an actor, and there just aren't stories being told, mostly that are as rich and human and recognisable as this. He may have been this enormous icon, global film icon, but he was a really troubled guy, and he had trouble having relationships. He had trouble with himself. He couldn't sleep. He tried a million things in very extreme ways to calm these raging storms inside his head, but he was so badly abused and neglected when he was a child that those wounds stayed open for decades and decades, and you just don't get to tell stories that are as rich and complicated, and watch a love story that turns into the opposite. And I recognise many things in him and fear them in myself and other people, and it just felt like something both relatable and on an epic scale.
Mm-hmm. There's such opportunity, but also it can be challenging to play real life people. What was your process in terms of preparation? Because I guess there's kind of the physical element, and also because it's over different periods of time, there's the challenge in that sense. But how did you also get under the skin of the characters? Understanding Archie, like you say, such a haunted, troubled man, but he sort of invented this Cary Grant character even in his real life.
Well, I don't know that he did. He made the Cary Grant character on screen. One of the reasons you can't find any interviews with him is he wasn't that off-screen, and 5 marriages will testify to that. Jennifer had a wonderful time when she was born with him. He'd come to a certain point in his life when he could devote himself to his daughter, but because that's a pure love. But the relationship with Diane was still going very wrong. It took him a long time to somehow quell his demons, and so my preparation was talking to Diane at great length, reading everything there was to read. I watched the films, but they're not very much use because they just tell you about the character he created on screen, which was a defense mechanism for him. And then I found an interview that was recorded. I wanted to know what he spoke like. And he didn't speak like he speaks in the films. He didn't have that certainty. He didn't have exactly the same intonation pattern, of course, every time he spoke. And somebody had recorded an interview with him in the year that he died and not told him they'd recorded it, and not played it to anybody in 37 years. And they played it to me. And for the first time in the terrifying process, I thought, oh, okay, I can hear him. I think I understand who he is from his voice, from his being misunderstood or belligerent or frustrated or embarrassed, or I could hear all those things in his voice. And so he seemed rich to me. But the truth is, I did all the research. They did the outsides, which was great. Yeah. And then I threw it away and just got on the dance floor with Laura and went, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, the outside was all very helpful as well. But watching tons and tons of footage at first and interviews, and And listening to Diane constantly in my ears wherever I went, all the time, watching her. And then when I, eventually got in contact with Diane, she was unbelievably helpful and so generous, and spoke to both of us for hours and hours on the phone, and told us, very personal things as well, just for us to know, and that we could talk about together, that we would then not, tell anyone else, but they were informative for us in playing that relationship.
And how did you see their relationship? And do you feel that when we look back now, sometimes those age gap relationships, maybe we see them differently? Was that one of the elements you had to kind of grapple with and understand her character in particular?
Yeah.
Relationship?
I mean, Cary was older than her father. You can understand the appeal of Cary. I think ultimately, probably, maybe not just the age, but the power imbalance was a greater strain on the relationship and
his behaviour.
Cary himself.
Yeah.
But because
his desire to control every aspect of who she was and how she was.
Became subservient to him, and maybe that is a factor into that. But Diane starts as this very full sort of jolt of energy, and then as the relationship went on, he sort of just drains her out of her, so she becomes
suffocated.
Yeah.
In many ways, yeah.
And being on set, did you have any really challenging moments, or on the flip side of that, any highlights?
God, yeah. I mean, it was challenging. Every scene was always challenging.
Playing Guess That Tune in the makeup chair, that was a highlight.
Singing. Neither of us were mad keen on singing.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
But you've made the cut. They had to dub me.
They mixed me right down. Luckily, after he sings, he quotes a critic that says he was a terrible singer, so I could pretend I did it on purpose.
This is brilliant of Paul, our director. He said, we've locked off episode 1 and sent it to ITV, and I went, oh my God, what's it like? How is it? And he said, well, we've had to put a banner over that scene of you two singing saying, this will be in tune. I was like, any other feedback? No? Okay.
I was wondering whether for you as well, like the scene with your father, but with Harry Walters, your mother, and him having kind of those flashbacks, and almost kind of that trauma, sort of revisiting, bubbling up on this perfect life he's tried to create. How was pulling off that scene?
But pulling off, I don't know. I mean, our job is to kind of. Nobody tells stories about the Village of the Happy People. Like, nobody will buy a ticket to watch it. So there are always people in extraordinary situations, extraordinarily dramatic situations. And the more I do it, the older I get, the more I know that you don't prepare for it. You don't think, oh, this is the bit where I get angry or I get upset. You just get in the situation. You try, like children do when they're playing in the garden, to just be in it.
And Paul would be very good at the beginning of every scene to kind of go, what do you think this scene is about? And that stops you from going, what are the lines? What am I doing? What am I saying? Like, okay, what's actually happening, as opposed to what are we saying?
And to give you the space to do whatever felt like it came naturally, and to try lots of things in lots of different ways. And we trusted him in the editing. So yeah, there's some very hugely dramatic things that happened to him in his life that we create, and I tried to just be there and see what happened.
Almost out of time, but just very quickly, what do you hope people will take away from watching Archie? I mean, it really is a completely different side to Cary Grant than probably a lot of people were aware of. But there's a lot to be taken as well. I mean, just how he did manage to achieve what he did, coming from absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But also, is there a dark side to fame? And this idea that he had to create this character in order to survive.
Oh my God.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe there's a dark side to fame, but I think in this case there's a dark side to Cary.
Yeah, I think his childhood, you can't escape the scars of your childhood unless you really work on it, and no external validation or even the love of the entire world is going to cure those ills until you really take a good look at them and heal. Look, there's billions of famous people today. Andy Warhol was right. Everyone's having their 15 minutes, and lots of people feel less than the people they look at on their phone.
Yeah.
And don't ever think that the people whose lives look shiny and perfect are anything like.
Very easy to fall into that trap, isn't it, of looking at other people's lives and assuming they're perfect. And these two certainly, that was not the case.
No.
Thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Can't wait for everyone to see Archie, and huge congratulations. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.